Welcome to Her Own Boss, the podcast designed to help you find your inner entrepreneur. Her Own Boss is created by Lucy, Megan, Nikki, Ben, Sarah, and me, Anissa, as we start our careers and learn from the inspiring women who can help us along the way.
Hey everyone, this is your host Nikki, and today I'm joined by Menke and Juliet Gouldman for our International Women's Day special episode. Melissa is the founder and board chair of Access Afya, a social enterprise that provides high-quality, affordable healthcare in Nairobi through both physical and digital solutions. Juliet is the head of strategic and external engagement at Barclays Business Bank and is dedicated to removing the barriers faced by women and other marginalised business owners. Now, even though International Women's Day comes just once a year, Juliet and Melissa are constantly celebrating and supporting women in their communities. We discuss what this looks like in practice. First for Melissa, who works with Nairobi's informal settlements, and Juliet, who leads on Barclays' commitment to supporting female founders in the UK start and scale their businesses. I hope you enjoy, and happy International Women's Day.
This episode is sponsored both by Rise, created by Barclays, and Barclays Eagle Labs. Rise and Eagle Labs are on a mission to support female founders shape the future of entrepreneurship by providing access to networks, mentorship, and training. Search Rise, created by Barclays, or Barclays Eagle Labs to find out more.
Hi Juliet, hi Melissa.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
All right, I think. So far, so good today.
Yeah, pretty good.
Very good. Right, I've got 3 sort of icebreaker quick-fire questions for you. I'm going to jump right into it. I don't think these ones are too bad. Okay, so first one is tea or coffee. Melissa, you go first.
Coffee, definitely.
Juliet?
Tea, without a doubt.
Interesting. I'm definitely a coffee girl. Right, if you could switch lives with anyone for a day, who would it be? Juliet?
Oh, great question. I think I'd go for Laura Marling, who's a fantastic musician and just very jealous of her incredible skills, both songwriting and singing. And I think it would just be amazing to be able to possess those skills just for one day.
That is a very good answer. I also wish that I could sing. Melissa?
I would do a professional kite surfer just to see what you do with that type of talent.
Very cool. I would particularly love that now when we're in lockdown still here in the UK. I think that would be a nice change of scenery. And then the final question is, which fictional character do you wish was real? Melissa, if we could start with you.
These are tricky. Can I go second? Do you have a good one, Juliet?
No. What have you done to us? I'm just thinking of all my favorite books, but like so many are really miserable.
No, I was trying to think of one. I'm almost trying to think about what sort of bad guy punishes people that could be quite useful in real life.
Well, I'm happy to take those as your answers. I think they say a bit about you anyway, which is the purpose of the quickfire questions. Awesome. Right. So just to get started and for the benefit of our listeners as well, it would be great to get just a bit of an introduction into who you both are and what you both do. So Juliet, do you want to kick off first with your intro?
Sure. So my name's Juliet Gouldman. I work at Barclays Business and I head up the strategic and external engagement team there. So I do a lot of work working with the rest of the industry, with government and with business groups, all really focused on issues that face small businesses in the UK.
Fantastic. And Melissa?
My name's Melissa. I'm the founder of Access Afya. So we're an affordable primary healthcare company that operates in Nairobi, Kenya. And I was the CEO for 9 years, and this year have transitioned into founder and executive board member.
Fantastic. Thank you both. And on behalf of kind of the whole Her Own Boss team, we're really, really excited to have you both on for this episode. And given this is our kind of International Women's Day special episode, I would just love to start with a question around how you both are sort of championing women and supporting women, whether that's through your work or in your own personal lives. Melissa, do you want to kick off first?
Yeah, sure. So Access Afya was essentially founded to work with some of the most vulnerable populations in Kenya. So specifically going into informal settlements. And unfortunately, women are really part of these most vulnerable groups. You're 30 times more likely to die in childbirth if you were born as our patient than if you're born, in the US or other more developed health
Yeah, wow.
economies. Access to family planning is incredibly inconsistent. So just by sort of the nature of trying to improve basic and reliable health services, we're actually helping women both plan their families, decide if they want to invest in education before starting a family, and then when they do start a family, make sure that them and their baby come out healthy on the other end.
That's awesome. And Juliet, how about you?
Wow, how do I follow that? That's incredible. Amazing work. I think for me, when I started working in financial services, I was really surprised by how many rooms I'd be in, and I'd be the only woman, or I receive feedback saying I was too serene or not aggressive enough. Yeah, I think everyone's heard that. But I was really fortunate, and I had lots of other women and men mentor and sponsor me, and make me realize that my style could actually be an asset, and that I didn't need to be aggressive, just assertive. And they gave me a lot of opportunities to develop. So something that I've since tried to pass on to other women that I work with is to be there for them, to mentor them, work out what their career goals were, what skills they needed to develop, what opportunities they should seek out. And I think one of the things I've seen when working with women from all sorts of different backgrounds, different skills, different goals, but there are themes that are consistent across so many of them. The issue of childcare is one, but I think also the issue around confidence, which is a topic that you've addressed so well on your podcast. But there is such amazing talent out there that it's just really important to support and help each other realize our ambitions.
Yeah, I mean, both listing out some amazing work there. And I think what we kind of hope to cover in the podcast in general, but particularly through this episode, is how empowerment of women, no matter how you do it or where you do it, is a really worthwhile activity. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting to know a little bit more about how both of you are kind of putting that work to action. I guess, Juliet, if we could start with you and kind of on the financial services side, I know that Barclays is a signatory of the Investing in Women Code. And so it would be just great to hear from you what that code is and why it's so important. And I think it's a topic we've kind of covered without giving it a name throughout the podcast, particularly around kind of women being able to access funding and being able to get their businesses up and running.
Absolutely. So it's an initiative, it's led by the Treasury, and they wanted to shine a light on the many challenges faced by female entrepreneurs. So they conducted this review, and it showed that if women were to start and scale business to the same degree as men, it could lead to a £250 billion boost to the UK economy. Absolutely huge. So they devised this code to try and spur the industry into action, both in terms of enhancing transparency, but also getting the industry to better support women. And I am pleased to say that Barclays is a founding signatory of the code. And so whilst the challenges that women face, they're complex, they're varied, some of these are like really deep-seated structural issues, they're not going to change overnight. So we've launched like a longer-term 3-year commitments. And on this, we're trying to help 100,000 women across the UK to start up and run businesses. Secondly, around, you pointed out that issue of finance, we're trying to help women connect with the investment and support they need to grow. And then lastly, looking at providing skills for this generation and the next to help them into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess, Melissa, it would be good to kind of hear from you at this point around what some of the challenges were that you faced when starting up Access Afya, whether you think that's kind of attributable to your identity as a woman or just, general things that entrepreneurs struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the hard things is there are a lot of challenges, and you never quite know if if any particular one you can pin down to your gender, because you've only lived in one body. So it's sometimes hard. I certainly have to say, I started a really difficult business. And what I mean by that is it was ambitious in the kind of social impact side of what we were trying to do. So we could have gone for, an emerging middle class market and made a lot more money. And we said, no, we want to be the first mover in the slum. No one's touching it. It's where half of the global cities are, let's go there. So that made it hard to raise capital, because I think that, that sort of incredibly high risk, model we were certainly a bit too commercial for the kind of donor community, but potentially a bit too ambitiously down market for more conventional capital. So that was sort of one of our big challenges, and I think that's more of just the nature of impact investing being still a quite nascent space with kind of actors completely across the spectrum in terms of their risk appetite, and it usually takes you a few hours to figure out where any one potential investor lies on that spectrum. I think that, of course, another problem, it just comes down to the power of networks. And so, I think your second business is easier to start than your first, not just because of your experience, but also because of your network. And as a first venture, coming more from the space of housing and urban development, instead of sort of from financing or finance, it was an uphill battle to build the networks that ultimately get you capital, because that's what you're doing in the early stages. You're finding individuals and angels who will trust you as you bring something that's an idea to life in the real world. And I think finally, one of our challenges is we're a tech-enabled business. So we still needed to invest in people in brick and mortar to get our value proposition working, which both takes, capital to actually build the clinic, to showcase sort of our innovative process design and everything we're trying to do differently inside of that physical space. But it definitely also, once again, made it a little bit harder to talk to conventional tech investors, because there was this very physical side of the business that you needed to get buy-in as to why that still is an important part of delivering healthcare, which it is. But that's just sort of one more hurdle to get over when trying to sell your vision, or in our case, trying to sell our vision.
Yeah, definitely. And I would be interested to know as well. So Juliet mentioned when she entered the financial services industry, she was often looking around the room and realizing she was the only woman there. Do you have any similar experiences being an entrepreneur? I know that obviously the representation of female founders differs across industries. Would you say that health tech is one of those industries that's doing quite well? Or is it one where you look around the room and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm the only female founder here? And if that's the case, do you think it impacts how people ask you questions or how they interact with you?
Honestly, when I started this business almost 10 years ago, it wasn't like I was the only woman. It was just like I was like the only one. And so you're trying to say, why would you do a healthcare, when you could do microfinance or solar, which were sort of the other impact sectors active in Kenya that had a lot more, research and capital and activity going on in them. So I think battle number one is just, feeling alone, not even isolated in a room, but just sort of isolated maybe outside of the room completely. I guess sort of fast forward to what the scene looks like now, because there's been a lot more activity and investment in this space over the last 10 years. I do think that the field here is a bit more balanced. I do think that there are definitely some ambitious, women-led health tech ventures operating in East Africa, which is the market I know best. I do think that there are still, unique challenges to women raising capital, but at least there are others there, which means that also on the investor side, they're getting pitches from multiple women, and there's a little bit more of an opportunity, I think, for investors to at least see, maybe the differences in how a female and a male might pitch, because you have a higher number of women approaching you and pitching you for funding, which I think, potentially helps us get, kind of bridge that gap to more equal access to capital.
And Juliet, how do you feel kind of hearing all of this? You obviously have a lot of experience interacting with lots of different founders. Does any of that resonate with you? Do you think these are common challenges?
Absolutely. It's just, literally everything you're saying is just sort of resonating so much with what we've seen. The original review, it focused on three fundamental challenges, all of which you've listed there around one, access to finance. You're looking across the whole of the finance ecosystem, so including VCs and banks. Women just aren't getting access to the same level of funding. Secondly, around family care responsibilities, women still have majority of responsibility when it comes to family care. And then lastly, the skills issue and the networking side as well. I think it's interesting, women are less likely to believe they possess entrepreneurial skills, not have them, but believe they have them. And they're also less likely to have access to mentoring and networking. But on the flip side, they're more likely to value them than men. And it was similar when we started to look internally at our own customers. We saw similar trends. Firstly, there are far fewer of them. They tended to be smaller. The sector skew that they had was different. The finance question was quite interesting, because when we looked at the differences in finance, actually the biggest difference we saw was in how many were applying for finance. And they're far less likely to apply for finance rather than get it. But we've been sort of tracking how they've been doing through COVID, which has obviously had such a devastating impact on so many businesses, but it has had a bigger impact on female-led businesses. They're far more likely to operate in the sectors that have been most impacted by lockdown measures like hospitality and leisure. Then, of course, the issue around childcare. There was this quote that stuck in my mind from a report that the Female Founders Forum did, and it said, when everyone was forced to work from home, the men got the home office and the women got the kitchen table. And I just thought, yeah, that about sums it up.
Yeah.
So you're seeing, similar themes come over and over around, the confidence issue, the skills issue, work-life balance, and then those questions on finance. And it can impact women at all stages of their business. First of all, am I ready? Do I have all the knowledge that I need to start a business? Then how to manage the demands of running a business with growing a family? How do I grow? Is it too risky to expand my business? What are the right networks? And I think from what I've seen, I wouldn't say that women are risk averse, but I think they are more risk aware. They want more knowledge. They want to understand what are all of the different permutations and options out there before they can make informed decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good summary of those points. Sorry, Melissa, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that point of women weren't even necessarily less likely to get funding, but they were certainly less likely to ask is a really powerful one, because I know I personally always felt, especially in the earlier stages, that I had to get something right and then ask for money to grow it. Whether that thing was, a product demo or a process, or even just, let me wait another month or two till the numbers look, because we're growing and they'll look even better. Whereas I think that more confident and male founders might have said, well, I need the money now to get this right, to perfect the product demo, to continue this early growth we're starting to see. And so I certainly know that really resonated with me and how I've, behaved in raising money for my business.
I've seen that in other female business owners when we were, talking to lots of different ones at different stages. And there would be these examples of women running their business and thinking, having a question about how they valued their services, and, getting the sense that actually maybe they should increase prices, but not wanting to, being worried about what the impact that might be, or having those conversations, or waiting for somebody to say, give them feedback that's like, this is so brilliant, you should increase your prices, which is obviously not going to happen, but it's that sort of that waiting for that permission point. Whereas, as you say, other people might approach it differently.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And, I've probably not spoken to as many female founders as either of you, but even just from doing this podcast, I think what's been really interesting is how a lot of, particularly the young women that we have on who are kind of at university or leaving university, is they'll have a side hustle, and that will be their business. And I think it's clever because they're allowing themselves to work full time and support themselves while starting up this business. But I think it's also kind of, as you were saying, Juliet, they're risk aware, and they're thinking, okay, if I'm not ready to take that leap yet and do the business full time, then I'll do it on the side. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that evolves in the future, if more women start just tackling it full on, or if this sort of side hustle culture will continue into the future.
Yeah, and there are advantages to it in that. Some other research we've seen is that, women, they're more likely to have formal business plans. They're more likely to seek external guidance from accountants, from lawyers. So, they're probably, safer prospects, really. But it's kind of that, how do you play into this could put you at an advantage, but still sort of being aware of some of the other things that might be holding you back as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. And I think it kind of brings me on to the next question I wanted to ask, which is sort of less focused on the differences or the challenges, but more on where can women actually get support. So Julia, I'd love to start with you and hear what support that the industry has available for women and kind of female founders in general.
Yeah, I mean, pleased to say there's so much out there, and one of the things I've been really heartened to learn is that the crisis has actually led to more young women wanting to start a business. So, for all of you listeners out there thinking about starting a business, no, you're not alone, and we've got lots of fantastic tools and services that we built to really try and address some of the challenges that we've been talking about. So we've got a range of local events. We've got lots of mentoring available via our UK-wide network of Eagle Labs and Rise Hubs. You know, we get really fantastic feedback from these. Either somebody's had been really inspired by an amazing speaker that they've heard, or they've learned something new, or even just finding like-minded individuals that you can connect with and bounce ideas off and expand your network. I know a point, Melissa, you were talking about the importance of that as well for your business. I mean, through our life skills program as well, we've got a lot of content available, both for school age and older, focusing on really practical ideas, like how do you develop a business idea, and then how do you actually turn that idea into a reality. I mean, we set up the Female Founders Forum in partnership with the Entrepreneurs Network, which is a really fantastic organisation. You know, it's where women can connect, they can network, they can find different mentoring opportunities as well. And if that sounds like a lot to take on and everyone's trying to find pens to scribble it all down, pleased to say that we've actually tried to help you navigate through all the information available. So at Barclays, we have built a women in business hub at our Barclays business site. Hopefully, Nikki, we can put a link somewhere to guide all of your listeners towards. But it brings together all these useful elements. You know, it's got really practical tools on how you write a business plan, cash flow tools, checklists on how you navigate through COVID, and then also links to how you find out about different events. So please do go and check it out.
Yeah, brilliant sales pitch. There's so much going on and so much support. I have looked through it myself. And Melissa, for you, what's been the best support you've received, or where do you go when you're facing these challenges and you need a bit of help?
So I think at this stage, luckily, I have some really great advisors and mentors, and so that's where I go. Some of whom are investors in the business, some of whom are just good friends of the business. But that's sort of always the first go. And I think the best thing is when you can have that type of mentorship with somebody where it's comfortable enough that you can reach out for quick help. Just maybe a WhatsApp, or does this look okay? And then sort of do a deeper dive as needed. So 100%, that's been the kind of best type of support. And I think that groups, like Female Founders First, where we connected with Barclays initially, did a really good job of prioritizing that within their support, but also previous programs we've been in have made those connections.
Yeah, that's great. I think, the importance of networks and having connections has come up a couple of times already in this episode. I think it's so important. Kind of changing topic a little bit, Melissa, I wanted to ask a bit more about your experience as a female founder of a health tech company in particular. Do you think that there are any sort of benefits to you being kind of the founder and previously being CEO, and then also how you've kind of built a team around you that reflects the sort of communities you're operating in?
Yeah, so I think first, one of the benefits is our business is built around improving the experience of getting healthcare. So there's of course the tech angle, which helps us be more efficient and cost effective. There's process work we're doing, but at its core, by being a venture in a low income settlement, people really do have to choose us, over a status quo of maybe doing nothing, or traveling to a charitable hospital, waiting in line all day, and they have to choose us because of excellent service, because they don't perceive all of the back end things we're doing to quality assure and scale the experience. They perceive their individual experience. So I think the first thing I'll say is I put an emphasis very early on taking more of a human-centered design approach to the full healthcare journey. How do you feel when you walk in? How do you feel, within our consultation rooms, how do you feel after the visit? And we've designed in, really simple things like we text message every single patient 3 days after their visit to check on them and see if they're feeling better. It's one of our patients' favorite things about us. It sounds quite simple and obvious, but I've never had anyone, any healthcare provider do that, to me before. So there's a lot of simple things we really built in when we did this intensive journey mapping. I think another sort of thing that I brought to the table was, how to think about communication strategies. I ran marketing for the first few years. And the reality is we did our market research, and women really make the decisions around healthcare for the family. So even if, our patient split is about 55% women, 45% male, but the oftentimes, the males in our patient database are, our children, our teenagers, and it is the women in their lives that are sort of urging them to go to our clinic over another facility. And so we had to think about, how do women make decisions? And in our market, they make it through their friends. And so we had to find ways to make our marketing, prioritize referrals, brand ambassadors, community integration, and have that, weigh much more strongly in how we plan our marketing than things like, radio or other sort of spots that might not actually hit the decision makers that we have to hit. And then how have I built, a team around me to continue to take the mission forward? Honestly, it took years, but I have an incredible team right now. The team has a really interesting mix of people with backgrounds in clinical practice. So we have both our frontline healthcare workers, but also on our internal kind of headquarters team. We have 2 physicians on the leadership team. We have people with that background in public health, in nursing and pharmacy that kind of make up that team, with our product and engineering team, with people from the operations side. Besides myself, every other full-time member of the team is Kenyan. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is we have a program that prioritizes hiring certain roles, prioritizes candidates from the informal settlements where we work. So about a third of the company today, about 30%, comes from informal settlements, which means that we stay really close to our target users, because they're a big chunk of the company today.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think all of that stuff you're talking about doing your customer research and figuring out where and how your patients make these decisions is really good sort of business sense. But then I think your point around women making the decisions for their family in terms of healthcare is really interesting and kind of links back to what we were talking about at the start of the episode, about the importance of empowering women and how it kind of, I guess, brings, the community up with them as well. So Julia, I'd love to hear from you kind of what some of the strengths you see in female founders that you've worked with, and also any benefits as well for the wider kind of economy or community to having more female founders.
I mean, so many. It was interesting. Again, another point that you touched on there around the importance of community, and I think the way that you approach your business, it's less transactional, and I think that's actually something that I've heard has been a real asset for other female founders. There was one that we work with who runs the Pud store, Fran Bishop, fantastic entrepreneur. And she was telling me the story of how she had to pivot her business, which was a retail store for children's clothing, into quickly make it digital because of COVID. But rather than just sort of focusing on the sales bit, she really focused on what are the additional touches that you can do to. She included personalized notes, for example, to each of the customers, and she set up different sort of communities and hubs within it. So not only is that sort of creating something that's just bigger than just a simple store selling clothes, is creating this community, but then it's good business sense, because then you get all of the repeat business, but not just that, they tell their friends, and again, you're expanding your network with different ways of marketing out. So there are all of those aspects that are just like a real positive asset for women as well. And then I think, I've touched on some of the other parts that women tend to do around the planning, the wanting more knowledge. It might be like less gung-ho, but actually it just makes really sound business sense. So I think leaning into some of those strengths, but I think from the financial services industry, what we can do better at is, better at explaining, better at putting all of that information out there so that women can make those decisions. I think to your point around what's the importance of this, well, it's critical to have a diverse ecosystem. This is not a zero-sum game. If women do better, then the whole country is going to do better. So there's a big sort of moral importance as well as it being just plain good business sense as well.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And so towards the end of every episode, we like to kind of ask our guests what sort of advice they'd have either for themselves or for others. And I think this is going to be kind of an interesting one. So what advice would you give to your younger self? And then what advice would your younger self give to you? Which I think is an interesting way to turn the question around. Melissa, if I could start with you first.
I think the advice I would give to my younger self is, first of all, it takes time, so of course you want to learn quickly, and get your product out there, but it takes a lot of time. So be patient and really build a good team around you, which doesn't just have to be employees, but, supporters and advisors and, other founders that you can talk to after a hard day. So that would be the advice I'd give to my younger self. I think that my younger self would tell me, to stay idealistic, to continue to think about our challenges, as design challenges, and and continue to, use a lot of creativity and, HCD as we build new products and tackle new things. So I think that's what would happen in the reverse way.
I love it. And Juliet, how about you?
I think what I'd say to my younger self is to not let fear prevent you from trying something. I really have a mantra of what's the worst that can happen? And I think when you get, which a pandemic apparently, but when you get more experience and things do go wrong, and they will go wrong, it's inevitable. But when you come out the other side and you've survived, you've learned from it, it really helps chip away at that boulder that's in front of you, telling you to stop. I think, I can bring this to life a bit. I think when I started my career, I was at a small consultancy, and my boss let me do this big important pitch to prospective clients, and I was nervous, but, really excited. And then I got up there and I was doing my spiel, thinking that I'm smashing this. And then I look around and realize that this guy in the front has fallen asleep.
No.
Yes, just started to snore quite loudly. It's like, exactly. So, obviously you're like, and you start to think, am I that dull? But I got through it, and I really learned, and I improved my delivery style, and I learned the importance of engaging an audience and bringing them in with you rather than just like talking at them, and of course the importance of making sure everyone has coffee beforehand as well. You go and you survive, and I've got so many of these. Like, there was this other time I was giving a presentation, over 100 people in an office. Do you remember offices? They were nice places. But they had, I don't know if you recall, but they always used to have like the sections on the floor where the plugs were and all the equipment and things.
Yeah.
So there I am in full flow in front of hundreds of people, and then my stiletto heel gets stuck. And I thought, absolutely, fall flat on my face. It's your worst nightmare. It's the one thing you think, what do I not want to happen when I'm going
like a scene from a movie.
Exactly. But again, you learn from this. I survived. Obviously the main thing I learned was to switch to block heels away from stilettos.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things, and I lent into it. I made a joke of it. It was absolutely fine, and definitely no one fell asleep in that presentation. So I think once you kind of gone through all of those, you think it will be okay, And then I guess to flip it, I think that's a bit harder, isn't it? But advice that my younger self would give me now, I'd say probably use your time wisely and keep trying to learn new things. I think it gets harder as you get older. You got work and life balance and family responsibilities. I've got a 2-year-old son who takes up most of my non-working energy, and I think combined with the effects of lockdown, a lot of people's worlds have just gotten really small. By necessity, we've had to retreat. But as this passes, and it shall pass, I think my younger self would want me to step out and look up.
That's good advice. I'm still thinking about you tripping on the office floor. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't be that.
It was a classic. It's on my mind forever, but it was quite funny in the end, it has to be said.
And a huge health and safety risk as well. So when the plug sockets are on the floor, you can tell that was maybe male-centered design and not female-centered design.
Absolutely. It was no way a woman would design those in the floor or the grates in the paintings.
Yeah.
No way.
There you go. Another business case for female entrepreneurship then.
Absolutely.
I guess I've got another advice-based question. I think this one's more, again, geared around female entrepreneurship. And if you could give, I guess, a young woman who is really thinking about starting a business but doesn't quite have the confidence to, what one piece of advice would you give her to kind of help her over that hurdle?
Well, it's such a hard question because you want to say, just go for it. But that's not very practical advice. Pitch your friends, I guess, because you'll either get a lot of support or you'll get the types of questions that will help you clarify your thinking, that will make it much stronger by the time you ultimately decide to just go for it.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I think I go for something similar. I'd say things that give me confidence, I think it's knowledge, preparation, and listening as well. So if I have a big event or important meeting and negotiation, make sure I know the topic inside out, game it through, do what Melissa said about have somebody chuck the hardest possible questions at you, what's the weakest point of your business plan, and then make sure you focus on that area and have all of your questions sorted such that by the time comes and you have to go in and present, that there's not an element of that story that you don't know inside out or that you're not prepared for. And then I think on the listening front, it helps you learn, it helps you react and adapt. But I think it can also give you confidence in that. I know something I hear a lot from young women is the perception that they don't necessarily belong in the room. Why should I be there? And I think when you actually listen to what's going on, more often than not, you'll realize when other people are talking, you'll think, well, yeah, I knew that, or yeah, I could have made that point. And then you realize, yes, I do deserve to be here and I deserve to have my voice heard.
Yeah, that's great advice as well. And it kind of preempts my final question, which I ask all guests. And it's what gives you confidence? So Juliet, you kind of answered. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to your answer as well.
No, sorry, already did it.
Right. Very proactive.
We can fix that in the edit though, can't we?
Absolutely. All right. Well, Melissa, then, what gives you confidence?
Well, at this stage, I think track record. So it's not just, I don't just mean that in terms of, accolades. I actually mean we have 10,000 patients every month using our service. It's working. So when you really feel like, again, maybe this is a bit of a female response, but when you actually have perfected what you're doing, it's working, you're good at it, then it becomes much easier to sell and convince other people to just see what you see.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the podcast. I've absolutely loved it. It's been a really interesting and insightful conversation.
Thanks for listening to this special International Women's Day episode. Together, let's continue supporting and championing each other and women around the world. If you enjoyed the episode, then please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating. It helps with our visibility so that even more amazing women like you can find Her Own Boss. You can find out more about us at herownboss.co.uk or by searching Her Own Boss Podcast on Instagram and LinkedIn.